This is going to be the LoopsHackwichP. I'm going to do this in a couple of videos. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to launch Playgrounds. I'm going to go to create a new app, and some weird things going to happen. For some reason, I have 2 copies here. I'm not going to worry about it, but I'm going to open, it's the same name. I'm going to open one of them. So I'm going to go to Open Playground. I'm going to go to where I can rename it. This is the weird part. I'm going all the way down to this thing called earlier, and here it is, 8:54 p.m. I'm going to rename it by right-clicking, and I'm going to say LoopsHackwichP. And I'm going to put an R for recording. You guys can put whatever period, or if you don't need to put anything, that's fine. And I'm going to reopen it. So I've got 2 here. It kind of crashed a little bit. I'm not that concerned about it. There's been a lot of glitches. I'm going to actually quit Playgrounds for a second, reload it up, and here it is. So I'm not panicking when this is kind of glitching out at me and not doing what I want it to. I'm just going to Command Q, which is closing the whole thing, and then reopening it and see if it works again. So now I'm going to reopen. I'm going to open this thing. Here we go. And now I've got my code. I'm going to double click up here. I don't need the navigation bar for a minute. And I've got my import Swift that says, hey, know how to code. I've got my struct content view, which is the actual page that I'm on as of right now. I'm going to stick to my content view. I have my var body, which actually draws the phone itself. And then I have my VStack. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create an @state variable for output to display some information. So @state variables go between my struct and my var body because this is where the code actually starts. So I'm going to give myself some room. So I'm going to be on line 5 here. Notice I just entered to have 3 spaces just so that I have some space. I'm going to do an @state variable. It's going to autofill for me, or it should. I'm going to do an @state var for outputs, or sorry, my output. And it's yelling at me because I'm being slow at typing, which is perfectly fine. I want to tell it, so now I'm initializing the variable. I've named the variable, and I've declared the type that I want. So I'm going to have this display. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to display this as a question mark. So not an empty question, but I'm just going to be like, just hold a question mark for me right now. Then what I'm going to do is in my VStack, I'm going to delete the image, and I'm going to change the text right here from hello world. I'm actually going to call this output. So I'm going to call the, it's my output, my output. And again, this is going to call whatever I put in the string, which happens to be a question mark. And now I get it shown over there. And then let's make, this is kind of small, so I'm going to modify it. So I'm going to go right underneath it. Modify means that period. And I'm going to do a font and a .large title. I'm going to make it just slightly bigger. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create 5 buttons below this text. All right. And I'm going to call them, I'm just going to use copy and paste to make this even faster, but I'm going to call them array 1, 2, 3, 4, and dictionary. So if you want to pause the video and do that real quick, but I'm going to do it hopefully pretty fast. So I'm going to do a title action button. My button is going to say array 1. And right now my action, whenever I see this pattern in the code, the open and close parentheses, arrow, and void, I'm going to hit return. My code is going to be later me. This is going to be a later me problem. So I'm actually going to delete that out for right now because I don't want that error. And then I'll fix it later. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to make sure that I grab that beginning curly bracket, the ending curly bracket, Command C, and I'm about to Command V this several times. And now I just get to change these. Array 1, 2, 3, 4, and dictionary. If I could spell dictionary, that would make my life a little bit easier. All right. Now, one of the things, notice how kind of stacked up this is over here. So what I want to do is I'm going to space things out a little bit. If you look up here in this VStack, I can actually give it parameters. What are parameters? Well, parameters are details. So I can say things like size, shape, color, bold. I'm giving it information about itself. So what I'm going to do, and this is the optional part, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do parameters are in parentheses. Notice this is this is the parameter for the fonts. So parameter I'm going to put spacing. And I'm going to say spacing of 20. And notice that spread everything out a little bit. So I'm just going to give some things some spaces. All right. The first thing that I'm going to do is above the var body. I'm sorry, above the var body here, right here, I'm going to build an array. I'm going to create or declare an array called fruit. So here I'm going to do a var fruit. And in order to do this, I'm going to put it in square brackets, and I want to have apple, pear, peach, and strawberry represented. Apple, pear, peach, and strawberry. All right, what I want to have happen, so I have my array up here. What I want to have happen is when my array 1 button is pressed, it's going to create a string to hold the output, and it's going to loop through and add each of those items to the display. And it's going to put all of these items looping through, starting at apple, pear, peach, and strawberry, and replacing that with the my output. Whew, all right, so that might sound confusing, but let's figure out how to do this. So button 1 array, inside the button, so I'm on my line 13, right inside the button. This is where my button 1 begins, or this is where my button 2 ends. I'm going to do a var output. And I'm going to equal that. I'm going to put that as an empty string right now. I get this warning and it just says, hey, you never used it. Well, that's just because I just created it. So computer, calm down. Now I'm going to do what's called a for loop, because this is a looping hack witch. So I'm going to say for item in fruit. So I've got this right here. So all of these are items, for item in fruit, and it's calling that. I'm going to give it directions. So here's my open parentheses, here's my close parentheses. I'm going to call the output that I just created, and I'm going to say plus equals, oh, and I'm going to get some fancy concatenating going, or string interpolation. So I'm going to do for item and then grab the item that I've created with a new line. Oh, so in order to do that, I simply put a new line here. Last thing that I have to do is I want to actually replace this question mark right here. So right outside of my for loop, still inside the button, I'm going to say, all right, now that I have this, it's got this cool thing. I'm hitting this button. Nothing's happening because I haven't told it to display anywhere. So I want to display right here in my output. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my output right here. My output is going to be set, assigned, or equal the output that I just created when my button 1 gets selected. And now when I hit my button 1 over here, apple, pear, peach, strawberry get created. It appears as if it displays the loop all at one time, but what it's actually happening is it's grabbing apple, putting it in the list, grabbing pear, putting it in the list, grabbing peach, putting it in the list, and grabbing strawberry, putting it in the list, but it's doing it so fast that it just appears that it does it all at once. So that's the very first one that I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I've created a place to store everything. Then I said, hey, do a for item. I could call this anything I wanted. I can call it X. I can call it Bob. I can call it coffee. As long as I call that item here, I'm string interpolating it with a new line, and then whatever that is created in that new item, I'm putting that in my output. And then I am increasing it. So going through the first one to the second one to the third one to the fourth one, and then creating that list and then inputting that gets created here in my output, which gets displayed right here. Okay, so new video for the next couple of arrays, and this one's going to be overall pretty short, Hackwich.